When you hear someone speak, you often know within seconds whether they think small or think big. It's not about accent. It's not about sounding educated. And it's definitely not about using complicated words. The richest 1% in the world speak differently. And once you notice it, you can't unhear it. Their voice carries certainty. Their words feel deliberate, and their presence quietly commands attention. Most people believe money comes from working harder or longer. Hard work matters, but it's not the full equation. The truth is, opportunities are given to people who sound like they can handle them. Before anyone sees your results, they hear your voice. And before they trust your ideas, they decide whether you sound like someone who belongs at a higher level. Rich people understand something early that most people never learn. Money follows authority. Authority follows confidence. And confidence is communicated through how you speak. One of the biggest differences is pace. People who struggle financially often speak fast, especially when they're nervous or trying to impress. They rush their words because they are afraid of being interrupted or ignored. Speed becomes a defense. But rushing doesn't make you sound smart. It makes you sound uncertain. The richest 1% speak slower than average. Not slow enough to bore people, but slow enough to sound in control. Every sentence feels intentional. This pace sends a powerful signal. I'm not anxious. I'm not desperate. I'm comfortable here. Silence plays a huge role in this. Wealthy speakers are not afraid of pauses. They don't fill every gap with noise. They pause to think, and that pause makes people listen more closely. Silence creates tension, and tension creates attention. Another key difference is certainty in language. Rich thinkers avoid weak words. They don't say, I think maybe this could work. They say, this is the direction that makes sense. Even when they reopen to discussion, their delivery is grounded. Weak language creates doubt, even when the idea is good. Strong language creates trust, even when the idea is still evolving. This doesn't mean arrogance. It means belief in your own thinking. The richest 1% also speak in clean sentences. They don't over-explain. They don't stack multiple ideas into one breath. One thought, one sentence, then space. That space gives weight to what was said. They also assume value. They don't speak like they're asking permission to talk. They speak like contributors, not spectators. Even when they read the least experienced person in the room, they don't shrink their voice. Another major difference is how they ask questions. Wealthy people don't talk more. They ask better questions. A good question can signal intelligence, leadership, and long-term thinking. What's the long-term impact? How does this scale? What problem does this solve? Questions like these position you as someone who thinks beyond the present moment. And people associate long-term thinking with money and power. Tone is another silent indicator. Rich people rarely sound desperate. Desperation pushes opportunities away, but calm attracts them. Even in high-pressure situations, their tone stays steady. This doesn't mean they don't care. It means they're emotionally controlled. Emotional regulation is a form of power. When your voice stays calm, people trust your judgment more. Volume matters too. Loud doesn't mean confident. Often, the louder someone gets, the less authority they have. Quiet confidence forces people to lean in. It makes others adjust to you instead of the other way around. This is especially true in negotiations. The person who talks less often controls the outcome. Silence creates pressure, and pressure creates leverage. Another important trait is how rich people handle disagreement. They don't react emotionally. They don't defend immediately. They pause, acknowledge, and then respond. I understand your point. That's a fair concern. Let's look at another angle. This keeps conversations productive and signals emotional intelligence, which is critical at higher levels of success. Wealthy speakers also avoid complaining. Complaints signal lack of control. Even when something goes wrong, they frame it as information, not frustration. This didn't work because the system is flawed. That approach costs more than it returns. We need a better structure. Notice how the focus stays on solutions, not emotions. Precision is another marker of wealth thinking. The richest 1% avoid exaggeration. They don't speak in extremes. Instead of saying this always fails, they say this hasn't worked in the last 3 attempts. Specific language feels credible. Vagueness feels weak. Even humor is used differently. Rich people don't joke to seek approval. Their humor is subtle, controlled, and confident. It lands because it's not trying too hard. Their stories are structured, beginning, insight, outcome. No rambling, no chaos. Storytelling becomes a tool for influence, not entertainment. At the core of it all is mindset. The richest 1% speak from abundance, not scarcity. They don't sound like this is their only chance. They don't cling to outcomes. That energy alone changes how people respond to them. People can feel when you need something. They can also feel when you're choosing something. And that difference shows up clearly in your voice. Speaking like the richest 1% isn't about pretending to be someone else. It's about removing habits that signal insecurity and replacing them with habits that signal clarity, confidence, and control. Your words are not just sounds. They are signals. And when you learn to control those signals, people start treating you differently because they assume you belong at a higher level. As you begin to understand how the richest 1% speak, another pattern becomes very clear. They are intentional with every word. Nothing feels accidental. They don't speak just to fill space, and they don't talk simply to be noticed. Every sentence has a purpose, even when the conversation feels casual. One powerful habit they develop is thinking before speaking, not after. Many people speak first and then mentally chase their own words, correcting themselves midst. That behavior signals uncertainty. Wealthy thinkers pause internally, organize the thought, and then speak. This creates clarity, and clarity creates trust. They also avoid explaining themselves repeatedly. Repetition can be useful, but over-explaining is different. Over-explaining comes from fear of being misunderstood, fear of being judged, fear of not being enough. The richest 1% don't carry that fear into conversations. They state their point clearly and let it stand. If someone asks for clarification, they give it calmly. If someone disagrees, they don't rush to convince. Confidence doesn't chase agreement. It allows space for disagreement without losing composure. Another major difference is how they talk about money itself. Poor and average thinkers speak emotionally about money. They complain about prices, stress about expenses, and react strongly to financial topics. Rich thinkers speak about money like a tool. Instead of saying, "That's too expensive," they say, "That doesn't justify the return." Instead of saying, "I can't afford that," they say, "That's not a priority right now." The language shifts from emotion to this small change completely transforms how others perceive you. Emotional language signals lack of control. Strategic language signals leadership. The richest 1% also avoid gossip and small talk that leads nowhere. That doesn't mean they're cold or boring. It means their conversations have direction. Even casual conversations feel purposeful. They might talk about people, but the focus is on lessons, patterns, or outcomes, not drama. They also rarely criticize people directly. Instead, they criticize systems, strategies, or decisions. This protects relationships while still addressing problems. The system isn't working efficiently. The process needs improvement. The structure encourages the wrong behavior. This approach keeps them respected, even when delivering uncomfortable truths. Another subtle but powerful habit is how they say no. Most people struggle to say no and then over-apologize when they do. Rich thinkers say no cleanly, calmly, without guilt. That doesn't align with my focus. I won't be able to commit to that. This isn't the right time. No excuses. No emotional explanation. Just clarity. This signals self-respect. And self-respect invites respect from others. They also don't overshare. Oversharing creates imbalance. The richest 1% keep a level of privacy in their speech. Not because they're hiding, but because they understand that mystery creates authority. When people know everything about you, they stop projecting value onto you. This is why wealthy individuals often speak in measured layers. They reveal information as needed, not all at once. Conversations feel balanced, not one-sided. Another key difference is how they speak about the future. Poor thinkers speak in hopes. I wish. I hope. Maybe. Someday. Rich thinkers speak in plans. The next step is, the goal is, the direction we're moving in. Even when the future is uncertain, their language reflects intention, not wishful thinking. This creates momentum, both internally and externally. They also understand the power of framing. The same situation can sound like a problem or an opportunity depending on how you frame it. Wealthy speakers choose frames that create leverage. Instead of saying, we're behind schedule, they say, we now know what needs to be adjusted. Instead of saying, this failed, they say, this gave us useful data. Language shapes perception, and perception shapes outcomes. Listening is another overlooked skill. The richest 1% listen more than they speak, but when they do speak, people remember it. Listening allows them to gather information, understand motives, and spot opportunities others miss. While others are talking to impress, wealthy thinkers are listening to understand. That understanding becomes power later. They also avoid emotional storytelling that makes them look like victims. Even when they share struggles, the focus is on lessons learned, not pain endured. Victim language pushes people away. Growth language pulls people in. Their stories sound like progress, not pity. Another critical trait is consistency. Their tone doesn't change drastically depending on who they're re-talking to. They don't sound powerful with juniors and insecure with seniors. Their voice stays steady across environments. This signals inner stability. In high-pressure situations, this consistency becomes even more noticeable. While others panic or raise their voice, wealthy thinkers slow down. Calm becomes contagious. And the calmest person in the room often becomes the leader, whether officially or not. They also understand that words create identity. If you repeatedly describe yourself as trying, struggling, or figuring it out, your mind and others will accept that identity. The richest 1% choose identity-based language carefully. They say, I build, I invest, I focus, I decide. These verbs reinforce action and control. Over time, this way of speaking reshapes not just how others see you, but how you see yourself. Your confidence grows naturally because your language supports it. Ultimately, speaking like the richest 1% is not about sounding rich. It's about sounding grounded, intentional, and composed. It's about removing urgency from your voice and replacing it with clarity. It's about choosing words that signal ownership instead of fear. When you change the way you speak, you change the way people respond to you. And when people respond differently, opportunities start appearing in places you didn't even know existed. Your voice becomes your quiet advantage.